welcome to the 40K Fireside podcast, where we discuss everything to do with competitive Warhammer 40K with your hosts Vik VJ and David Gaylard.
Hell yeah, we are back. And we got a great episode for you today. Vic, the other day I was looking through and, we had those YouTube bots that contact our Fireside podcast email address. Usually they're garbage, but one came through and said, you guys have been operating for 3 years. And I was like, damn, dude, 3 years on the podcast. That's crazy, right?
Fantastic. That's absolutely flown by. And you know what? Thank you everyone for your support. It's been awesome to see this grow. And I hope you're enjoying the kind of growth of the type of content we do and the type of services that we offer. Because, as always, the Discord gang has been on fire recently. They've been really enjoying Dave's tournament that he's been organizing on TTS. We've had some Fireside merchandise, which has come out, some Fireside t-shirts and things. Those we're going to rerun at some point, but for now I have got a link in the description below to some Fireside Gaming Aids, which have been kindly designed for us by Fat Dwarf. Follow their link through to all of our stuff. We've kind of handpicked the items that we find the most useful and customized them to Fireside 40K, so make sure to check those out.
Yeah, I'm going to be buying some wound markers tonight, actually. Nice. Especially because I'm going to be using Repulsed Executioners in the future as well. So, no more stacking up dice next for me as well, for sure. But yeah.
Dude, they come in a really cool case as well, where you can kind of store all 8 of them and you can kind of unclip them out. So, yeah, quite innovative design. I'm a big fan of their work.
Nice. And if you've got an idea for a piece of merchandise you think might be cool, of course, you can always drop us an email. And get in touch with us. Vic and I are really open to any ideas. And I want to give a shout out to War Games FX. They are a company that makes gaming mats where you can use their War Games FX mat to actually set the terrain for you. I was playing on WTC this weekend. Well, we were both playing on WTC terrain this weekend. And if you didn't have a board that had the inches on it, like the game mat, then it was quite cumbersome to set up those boards, to say the least. But this is like a really cool app where you can actually hold it over the board and move the terrain piece at the same time, and it uses machine learning to look at the game mat and tell you exactly where it should be placed, so no more guessing. You can check those guys out. They're good friends.
That's so innovative, and we'll definitely put their link in the description as well. Dave, Fireside tier lists are some of our most popular content.
Everyone loves it.
Everyone loves it because we kind of combine our knowledge to take a kind of a snapshot of where we think the meta is going to be going forward. Now, last time we were pretty good, but not the most accurate. I think that was one of our least accurate Fireside tier lists. We messed up. We messed up. Absolutely.
We messed up on Blood Angels. That's okay. Some people there. Big shout out to the guy on Reddit who blasted me saying that I completely underrated Subterranean Assault. And of course it never did anything, so shout out to that guy. That's where we got it wrong. That's where we got it right for sure, but we overacted on Blood Angels a little bit. That's okay, but you can't always be right, but we try and give you our best takes, of course.
Absolutely. So I had an idea. The way we're going to do this tier list, guys, is instead of focusing on the very absolute, if this faction is played to its very best, which I think is sometimes a little hard for people to relate to, we're going to go for one tier lower than that. A tier which I think is growing. People who are kind of starting to hit 3-2, get those positive records, and are now starting to, more often than not, hit a 4-1 score. That's still a pretty competitive, successful player. And I think a lot of you guys can relate to that power level of play skill. I think that's a good one to play at compared to playing for absolutely everyone. Or playing for the very tip top of the meta. What do you think, Dave?
Did you know that 4-1 is still an 80% win rate? So
absolutely.
And 3-2 is still a 60% win rate. So when you hear people saying, "Oh, this army's at a 65% win rate," like that's a 3-2 player, right? And so it just it puts things into perspective a little bit there as well, right? But it is obviously a little bit different because Vic and I, we do play and we talk with our teammates, obviously at more or less that level, right? So that's a different experience for us as well, and so hopefully this episode's going to translate a little bit better. And maybe it'd be cool, Vic, why don't we preface this tier list in relation to the London Grand Tournament, which is the largest tournament ever in history, coming up in 2 weeks' time, because the list submission is in the end of this week on Sunday night. So that'd be a great kind of context to put it in, I think, as well.
Yeah, 100%. I think that tournament is going to give us a lot of data on this particular meta. And obviously, Dave and I are going to be doing content about the lists we're running. Dave is playing in the Invitational as well, so he'll be doing some analysis on that. But yeah, I think this tier list, we're going to keep it nice and classic, S, A, B, C tier, and try and differentiate between the armies. I'm going to give you my hot take, Dave.
Okay.
Right. I'm going to go straight in with my hot take. I think this is the most balanced the meta has ever been in Warhammer 40k competitively.
Wow. That is a hot take. Yeah, I'd probably agree with you there. I think it's always generally improving. You know, it's been a bit of 2 steps forward, 1 step back, right? I think is a good way of talking about it here. I think you're right. I think that the terrain format is definitely not the most balanced, though. So I think that...
you're saying for LGT?
For LGT, yeah. LGT specifically, you know, I think the terrain could do some serious improvements if I had to be critical of it. It definitely has shaped how I would think about list building compared to playing on just WTC or GW terrain. I think we're playing on boards that significantly favor, and I'm going to be talking about an army later on that will just... 2 armies, actually, that will directly exacerbate this point, but do favor mobile shooting platforms that have long range, for example.
Sure, so, and when a melee army wins LGT, what are we going to say then?
Yeah, but a melee army is not going to win LGT, because Liam will definitely win it again, playing Combined Arms CSM, which he calls CSM Gladius, because it's basically the same army to him. So I have zero excuse not to win LGT this year as well, because I'm probably playing Black Templars. Why don't we start off? Yeah, I know we were talking before this about a clip that you were a big fan of, and I think we're going to start off with Aeldari here.
I was doing Aeldari.
And, yeah.
Okay.
So why don't you give some context? Because I think...
Let me preface this, I think, because Aeldari, it's been really interesting, because I think when we got the initial MFM points, no balanced data slate, there was a lot of kind of chaos out there. I think, you know, Art of War, Stat Check, kind of went in quite hard with their take saying, you know, oh, Eldar may be broken, Reddit, Eldar may be broken. But just yesterday, we had videos from both Art of War and Stat Check with takes that were much more mellow about Eldar. I think now that we have the balanced data slate in place, I'm finding it really interesting seeing the way the takes are coming through. And one take that I saw was Anthony Vanella's take on Stat Check. When I make my Eldar opinions, there is going to be a little bit of bias in them, saying that, you know, I will say when they're broken, I called them out in the start of 10th edition, but nobody's going to believe me on whatever I say here because I'm an Eldar player. So we're going to get the exact opposite of an Eldar player, which is Anthony Vanella, who has historically hated Eldar. He hates playing against Eldar, but he came in with such a beautiful take that I want to put on the show. I've asked him for his permission. Thank you, StatCheck. You guys are amazing. Why don't you run the clip, Dave?
I think in general, I would say that the meta is in a really good spot. I think that people are getting a little rambunctious about Eldar. And I think that a huge portion of Eldar's power came out of how the meta was. And I think they are primed to get abused by how the meta will be.
They were real good against Death Guard, Chaos Knights, and Imperial Knights.
Yeah,
and now that they are relevant but not omnipresent parts of the metagame,
the army that went wherever it wanted with perfect mobility and blew doors off hulls was really good last meta. The army that struggles to kill elite infantry, doesn't like being pressured by big units, and no longer has challenger cards as a backup plan, is less excited about the current setup. I think there is a very real world where Eldar is, despite not getting very heavily nerfed in the slate, pushed out of being a top 5 army by the way the meta is. I think that taking Eldar in 8s is like genuinely risky.
So Anthony was saying the meta has changed a lot for Eldar, and because Knights and Death Guard are not as dominant, you're gonna see the win rate come down a little bit, I guess, and the meta become more hostile towards them.
You see, so my take is, I agree with a lot of the points he was making about the meta. I personally, I'm a little more positive on Eldar. I know he was a little bit like, oh, they're going to get absolutely smashed maybe by some of these melee pressure armies. And he's absolutely right. If you put enough bodies in front of Eldar, be they elite infantry or horde kind of infantry, Eldar can struggle to put enough output. And that means the number of armies which maybe they don't have a positive matchup in is still, it's not zero here. I still think they struggle, for example, into new Admech. I think they struggle into Emperor's Children. They definitely struggle into World Eaters. Yeah. So there are, and actually they struggle into, like, for example, a Horde Orc list. I still think they struggle into quite a few GSC variants as well. Now, these armies are not going to be every army you face. I think Eldar still have positive matchups quite well across the board. I just think it's not quite as dramatic as it was before. It's still requiring huge amounts of player skill to push yourself over the draw mark into the winning mark. I think Eldar is still one of the strongest armies in the game. And the only thing I would say, and I agree with John Lennon's take on Art of War on this particular point, which is that Eldar certainly haven't gotten worse, but I don't think they've significantly gotten better in their position in this meta compared to before. And while they may be ranked still relatively high amongst all the armies, I think they were in that position anyway. I don't think they automatically shoot to clearly being the best army in the game, which was probably the initial take I kind of heard when people saw the MFF points and saw that Eldar didn't get a change. One last point about this, because the clip on StatCheck was very interesting, because the day before, Jeremy, who was the other host you saw on the top right of the screen, he was there without Innes and Anthony Vanella. And his take was very negative about Eldar. Eldar really should have got a balance change. And you saw him raise his eyebrow during that clip when Anthony started talking. Further on from this, he then goes on to say that, actually, I remember Eldar at the start of 10th, and I can't let that go. It feels bad to play against an uninteractive playstyle. And I completely agree with that. People don't enjoy playing against these things. But reactive moves are a big part of 10th edition now. Fire and Fades are relatively rare, and Eldar are one of the only armies who truly have that in an effective way. So you can feel bad about it, but is the actual winning ability of Eldar increasing here in the meta? I'm not so convinced. So I don't think personally they jump up into what I would consider an S tier or an army which is broken. What do you think, Dave?
I agree on a lot of things there, and I think that if we're looking at a 4-in-1 perspective, I don't think we could earnestly put Eldar in S tier, for example. Especially in the context of LGT, and I think the LGT boards are a bit worse than WTC boards for playing Eldar on as well. In particular. So I think an A tier perspective is good. One thing that's fascinating about Eldar is that, they kind of carry that burden of being so powerful at the beginning of the edition, right? And, I was there when I played 18 Leviathan Warriors, and I've experienced that, for example, right? I think Warriors are still garbage, right? But, you made a really good point where you said, reactive moves are common, but fire and fade mechanics to that level of potency are very uncommon. And I think Eldar is the only one that has that, right?
Absolutely.
And I've said it for so long. I think, especially over the last couple of months when I've been playing, say, Space Marines, for example, I think I would like to see the uninteractive parts go away, but that's that's another discussion here. I think initially when I saw the MFM as well, I thought the points were pretty light. But the meta shifting around them is going to have a more impact than an otherwise points would have, for example. And I think, GSC got nerfed as well, very heavily. But, an army like World Eaters is going to be, I think, very popular, and we'll get to it soon. And that can be a really tough game for someone that's not a precise Eldar player playing with 0 to, one minute mistake. So I think somewhere in A tier for Eldar is really appropriate here. Whether we'll have an army in S tier, who knows?
I know. That's going to be such an interesting point here. Well, Eldar are going to jump in straight at the top of A tier for now. And we'll see where they kind of end up. I'm really interested to follow the journey with Eldar. One thing I would say is that there was a little golden period where the particular archetype that, say, I've been using was not something that people were really building for in the meta. They were building for knights, for Death Guard. They weren't building for MSU squishy infantry. I think that time has gone now. I think when people are going to be building their lists and thinking, how am I going to win a tournament? I think they're going to have Eldar in the back of their mind and see if they can find a way to just slightly improve that matchup. That, at the 4-1, 3-2 level, is that going to make a difference? I think it might make a little bit of a difference here. We'll have to see. My personal take is I think Eldar certainly don't get worse. Even if the meta gets more hostile in some areas, I think overall, Eldar not taking a significant nerf in this particular balance update means they're going to sit at their high power level that they already were at. But I definitely don't think they're broken.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. I am surprised they weren't nerfed more. I think a lot of people were surprised at that. Okay, cool. There we go. So, I guess let's start off with the left-hand side one. We've got Imperial Guard. I actually played a game of Imperial Guard today. It's been months since I played it. To be frank, I've been so utterly bored with the faction after playing over 500 games probably with nothing happening in the faction for such a long time. But today I played a game, and of course I had a Hellhammer, which is a Titanic vehicle, because I wanted to see if I could play a Titanic vehicle for the LGT Invitational, because I thought that'd be awesome. The Hellhammer was okay, it wasn't amazing. The advance and shoot stratagem is squadron locked, which it doesn't have. But, Guard received, I guess, a balance patch to some degree. The Baneblade variants came down 30 points. Leontis came down to an appropriate level. Gaunt's Ghost came down 10 points for some reason, which is strange because they were already quite good. And the Rogel Dawn variants went up 10 points. So more or less it's a wash. I don't think it's anything relatively that impactful, but the meta is obviously having a huge change to it. I think Guard is probably losing stocks in that case. And I think if you're not looking at the very, very, very top echelons, it's difficult, to be honest, if you're not talking about the very, very top Guard players, it's difficult to put Guard in anything above the bottom of B, I think. To be fair, I think there's only a handful of players in the world that will play Guard to an exceptional level, and they do well, but they are still, I think if you're playing Guard to an exceptional level, you're probably still going 4-1, for example.
Got it.
You have a serious amount of tough matchups at the high level, I think.
Would you say that like an increase in the effectiveness of melee armies is a negative for Guard to deal with, or not necessarily?
Yeah, well, I think Admech is a very tough matchup. They can be very good. I think Raven Guard is a very tough matchup.
All right.
And I think that, Aeldari is obviously is still a very tough matchup.
I agree.
And I think Blood Angels is not easy, and I think World Eaters is definitely not easy. For example, those are losing matchups on equal player skill. And an army like World Eaters can capitalize immensely on any small mistake. And I don't think Black Templars is a great matchup per se either. So there's no clear, this army is good against this top army, right? Which is usually when you see an army performing well. So I would...
That's
I mean, you played Guard quite a bit over the weekend, though, right, Vic, at ETC?
I did. I played them twice in the teams format using the Eldar. And I got a 15-5 in one game and a 10-10 in the other game. And I'll have to be honest, the 15-5 was because I had the advantage on supply drop.
Okay.
That game could easily have been a 10-10 as well. This is obviously Guard played by two very, very good players. One of them Gustavo, one of them Luis from Germany.
Yeah.
And at that level, played like perfectly, not overextending at all. There's very little ways that you can properly engage with them without being absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
So
they also had 12 Bulgren, right?
They both had 12
Yeah,
Bulgren.
and this is actually a critical point. 12 Bulgren does not work on UKTC terrain. And it works significantly less on GW terrain as well. Significantly worse.
Yeah,
So
they were fantastic.
Right, exactly. So in that matchup, they're obviously incredible, and that's actually why they build that particular list has got Aeldari as like a draw/positive matrix into that one as well. But I don't think that those units like 12 Bulgren will translate onto any terrain format which has a modicum amount of shooting on it, where Bulgren are really lackluster, unfortunately.
But in my opinion, I would say that Guard players don't despair. I think there is enough in your codex that with practice and kind of development, like especially the 4-1 level players, there is enough there for you to get through tournaments, win tournaments, compete at the very top level. You're just going to have to play really damn well to make the most of your codex.
Yeah, I think Hammer of the Emperor can come back a little bit now, actually. Given that Knights are falling out of the meta a little bit. I think, because I was playing Hammer of the Emperor earlier today, and on UKTC, you can play some really aggressive play patterns with Hammer, moving through walls and then advancing and shooting, like a Rogaldorn, for example, can be good, and maybe building an army around more of like the 2-up save, toughness 11 plus basis can be quite a good skew, because people will be seeing Knight popularity drop, and then you can kind of fill in that space as well. So I think it's an interesting potential build for them as well.
One discussion point I find really interesting is we've obviously got Eldar and Guard in 2 different tiers of different power levels, but I don't think I've seen a time where the gap in power between this B and A tier has ever been so small, to be honest.
Yeah,
and I think we might see that as we go through this tier list, that it's more like an A plus and an A minus than an A and a B tier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I'm worried about condensing them all into just like A and B, right?
Yeah.
It's always easy to do that, right?
We could just change all of this into an A tier.
Yeah, exactly, right? So yeah, I put Guard. I mean, at the moment, I would put it in the top of C tier, personally, if we're talking about other players there. And I think that will probably be reflected in the statistics.
So Guard players are interesting. I mean, we've discussed this a lot, and I know Guard players hate us saying this.
We vibe, dude.
The number of 4-1 players, those kinds of players you have in Guard, it's like they don't exist. You either have people who are super casual or like best players in the world playing Guard. so
it's quite binary, yeah.
It's a hard one to work out what actually happens in the upper tables, not necessarily the top tables.
For sure, yeah. Okay, I'm happy to, if on that you don't want to put it in C tier, that's fine with me. I
think we have worse to go in there.
We have worse to go in there. That's completely fair. Okay, talking about worse than that, Orks. Orks received a pretty big buff.
Big winner.
One of their buffs is that commandos can split. That's one of the very interesting ones I saw. The other one is that Gaz can join Ork boys, which makes him significantly faster, because he can get +4 to charge with the stratagem, +2 to advance, +2 to charge. And not only that, you're playing a huge unit that can swing charge or swing pile in as well. So some pretty big buffs there for Orks. I think there was one other buff as well that they received, but those are the 2 largest ones. Some points buffs on top of that as well. Brian was playing Orks at ETC over the weekend and did, Brian is obviously one of the best Ork players in the entire world. He did pretty well, I guess, but
tough.
I think... Yeah, okay, so he did okay, but I mean, he was also piloting Orks as well, right? And so I think that, to me, was a sign that someone so good on the army can only achieve what he achieved, was that Orks were they were not a great army, right? And so they've obviously gone up. And I think, are Orks a better army than Guard?
It's a really hard discussion point to have.
Yeah.
Because, so my problem with Orks is, if you were going to pick a melee army, why would you pick Orks over the other options? That's what I'd probably look at as my metric for seeing where they're going to sit here. I think their buffs were substantial. In fact, I think they had one of the largest buffs from this balance update. But do they come with the right tools? And I think they do have certain tools. Warhorde has a very interesting flat -1 to wound stratagem, and their transports can be pretty good in the melee mirror matchup.
For sure.
But
they suffer from 0 shooting output.
They do, which some of the other melee armies don't suffer from. So are Orks still kind of bottom of the pile of your melee choices? What do you think, Dave?
They obviously have the volume, which is quite nice as well, right? Like they have, you can mass like a big amount of bodies. I think their chaff unit is probably one of the best in the game. They've got Correction, which are like OC and 25 mil bases, 10-man units, very cheap. So in the combat matchup, that's good. Would the Ork player, would I imagine 4-1 Ork players doing better than 4-1 Guard players? Probably around about the same, to be perfectly frank.
I think
I think the side by side is rare. I think they should probably end up there.
Best friends, that's it.
Best friends.
Great novel. It's like 40 hours later or something like that, about a guardsman trying to survive on a planet infested with Orks, and the average lifespan is about 40 hours.
Yeah, but we've got trillions of bodies.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, a lot of people have been talking about this army being one of the best up-and-comers Emperor's
Yes.
Children. They've kind of gone from like here to like here to like, what, they back up again? What's the story?
Dude, okay, so in the last tier list, Dave, I told you Emperor's Children are not good in that meta,
Yeah.
but I'm going to flip-flop on them completely
Wow,
in
that's
this tier list, because I think all Emperor's Children need is a meta where vehicles, like tough vehicles, are not good. Like, for example, we saw them struggle a little bit against Hammer of the Emperor Guard, right?
Yeah,
They
for
kind
sure.
of bounce off Rogel Dorns.
Ultramarines
And
as
then
well,
we saw them, absolutely. We then 2+ armor save vehicles, and then Knights became extremely popular. Now, Knights have taken a significant nerf, I think, in this particular meta, and that's all Emperor's Children need to just bounce back. They were sitting with one of the lowest win rates in the game, alongside Orks, really. So they received buffs as well in this. We saw an actual rule change to Flawless Blades gaining an extra attack, which is amazing.
Nice.
A few points drops, a little points increase to the Lord Cacophonist, which is a little annoying, but Emperor's Children remain, I think, as one of the premium melee armies, which are good against other melee armies. They're actually quite intuitive to play as well. And they're very forgiving for when things go wrong. Like in the actual mix when you're fighting with them, you can kind of jump out and your 1 or 2 remaining pieces have about 3 different buffs on them and all of a sudden are removing the world.
Yeah, I mean, the super vegan, they have advance and shoot, fallback, shoot, and charge, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
and they have dudes and rhinos, which are good at shooting other combat units, which is exactly where you want to be against combat armies, really.
Yep, they have a fantastic taunt stratagem where you must attack certain targets. They have Lucius, who's a great fight first deterrent. They have shooting elements in Noise Marines, which introduce volume into the list that also gain buffs from coterie. They have great mortal wound output from a -1 damage character in the Winged Demon Prince, who's again good in a melee matchup. Very, very fast, good on multiple terrain formats. And I think EC actually line up incredibly well into this meta, and in my opinion, are one of the best armies in the game.
Okay, nice. So are they better than Aeldari?
So I think they have the positive matchup into Aeldari,
Okay.
and I think they have less bad matchups. If you were looking purely at singles, I also think they're more forgiving than Eldar. So at the power level we're looking at, or the player level, I think EC are a brilliant choice, and I would put them above Eldar personally.
Let's put them above there, the top of A.
Fantastic.
Hell yeah, I agree.
Beautiful.
I think EC are an interesting one, and I think a lot of players enjoy playing them because they're quite fun to play, right?
They
I
are.
think now that they're coming, the meta is less hostile towards them. We're going to see that number kind of explode. I think become a lot more popular.
Yeah, I really enjoy playing them, and actually, if I had a little bit more hobby time, I would consider LGT taking EC. I think they're great on UKTC terrain as well.
I had the pleasure of playing against this next army in the weekend twice at ETC, Sisters of Battle. Yeah, I played against the 30 Sacrosancts, 3 Castigators, Morven Val list. My army had a lot of volume, or had a lot of damage output when I wanted it, and a lot of precision, so I found that really good against the Hospitallers, and I'd played against it before. This army is quite good, and I genuinely think Sisters are better than Orks and Guard, for example. I think Castigators are actually quite good on UKTC terrain, and like Immolators can give you a nice bit of tempo in the early game. And if you don't have a lot of volume, Sacrosancts can be very difficult to chew through. 4-up invulnerable save, 5-up feel no pain, and they resurrect with OC2 is actually quite difficult to shift. Especially, I mean, they have miracle dice on top of that, so if you just, one bolter to kill one guy, it's never guaranteed. And I don't think the meta has gotten worse for them, actually. I think if there's more MSU trading units, there's a lot less hard-hitting total volume units, then these Sacrosanct blobs can really bog you down, whilst long-range shooting like Castigators plus an Immolator in the front can actually play quite well. So I'm curious to hear what your thoughts. Obviously, you played way more Sisters than me, but was the overall balance status was that good for them?
I think the meta and everything is lining up well for Sisters. If we're looking at 4-1 players, Sisters has that in abundance. Like it attracts all the players who are at that kind of level. And I think those players now have 3 different detachments, which are all extremely effective here. You've got the Champions of Faith, like you were speaking about with the Sacrosants. You've got Hallowed Martyrs, going for a more kind of balanced approach, nice combined arms, loads of tricks, and then you've got the Bringers of Flame, which I think still works to an extent. Now, the Hallowed Martyrs really interest me because I actually find it very interesting that Celestine got a point drop, which she's still extremely expensive, but she fits beautifully into a lot of these different archetypes. I think just playing Warhammer 40k well is what Sisters want their player to be doing. And I think that all the tools you have, the points, the unit abilities, the miracle dice mechanic, it all points towards Sisters just feeling a little bit stronger on the table than what they actually look like on paper. And I personally think that they'll do quite well in this meta. I mean, they were doing pretty well in the last meta as well because of their player base. I think they'll continue to do well, and I'll also kind of expect them to maybe start winning a few events as well. I would personally put Sisters as an A-tier army. I think they are a really, really great army.
Nice. I agree. I think they play well on lots of different boards here as well.
Absolutely. And the Hallowed Martyrs build is the one that I'm most interested in, Dave, because actually it has...
What's the pros and cons there?
Yeah, so it resurrects your characters.
Okay, yeah.
And you have the Taunt ability, the Suffering and Sacrifice ability.
Do you have some good enhancements as well, maybe?
Yeah, you can kind of buff your damage output a little bit. It's a great detachment for Arcoflagellants. You've got your Retributor's got a really nice buff, and we've got Astrid Thurga, who gives devastating wounds to her unit, which I think is brilliant, and I think it is an option that we'll start seeing. They have a great kill team unit as well. They basically have all the tools in the book, and with Celestine going down in points, I think we're going to start seeing her, maybe with some Seraphim or Zephyrim attached as well. Nice. I'm really excited to start playing around with Sisters. I think if you play them well, their ceiling is actually really high. Very similar with Eldar, but I think you have to play a little harder than you would with Eldar to really get maximum results with them.
Nice, awesome. Next army, Ultramarines. Obviously, I've been playing a lot of this one as well. I've been playing a lot of Marines recently. Ultramarines. It's an interesting one here. You know, they took some points increases. You know, they took points on Guilliman. Ballista's Dreadnought went up 10, but, you know, all in all, the list went up about 50 odd points, something like that. This is like the 6-hull Ultramarines list I was playing a lot of. The meta changing, I actually don't think is a good thing for them. For example, that style of Ultramarines list was very good into Knights, I think. In fact, that matchup was extremely good. And there's actually been a ruling that's... There's this ruling, on a side point, this annoys the fuck out of me, to be honest with you. The fact that we have so many different game systems making so many different rulings on things that are actually really, really important, it completely annoys me as a player. For example, there's a ruling for UKTC that I haven't seen anywhere else, which says you cannot, one effect or ability or movement, for example, cannot trigger multiple things, right? For example, you can't, when you're getting shot, smoke plus AOC, right? For example. I mean, that was obviously good in Ultramarines, right? Or you cannot reactive move twice or something. But, I mean, smoke AOC was like the biggest example of this. So, that's actually a shadow nerf to them, that particular ruling out for UKTC as well. But, you know, Aeldari not getting nerfed is a problem, because that matchup is almost nigh unwinnable.
Yeah, that's bad.
World Eaters becoming really popular is tough. Admech getting better is a bit tough. Black Templars, I think, is not an easy, straightforward matchup. So I think the hostility around the meta for Ultramarines has gotten a little bit worse. And in particular, if you're playing the Stormraven, you're not able to AOC plus -1 to hit and wound on this particular ruling, which can have a really big impact. Like if you're getting shot from, you know, something is shooting your Stormraven, maybe some Ballistari, Iron Strider Ballistaris, you can't AOC plus -1 to hit and wound, which is obviously what you would want to do on your 280 point Stormraven, for example. So, you know, there's obviously multiple builds. There's Gladius plus Stormlance, and at the end of the day, also Ultramarines have not been an army which have shone in a 3-2-4-1 player's hands, right? That's not a winning record which you commonly see with Ultramarines 4-1. In fact, it's a lot of times more like you see players go 3-2, 2-3, or 5-0 stomping, right? And realistically, the players that are doing very, very well with Ultramarines are under 5 in the world, it would seem, at the best of times. So the poster child has not performed well, I think, outside of a couple of players. I've liked them. I was about to play them for ETC. I think they're really powerful still. But I think if you're looking at Marine options right now, there are some bigger, better ones coming up that we're going to be discussing as well. So I think Ultramarines are better than Guard, and I think they're better than Orks here as well. So I think I would put them just above Orks here, but I think we're going to be fleshing out probably the upper parts of B tier a bit more than we usually would. What do you? Anything crazy there, you think?
No, I agree with you. I think they still have a solid rule set. I don't think the meta has moved in the correct direction for them, so I would agree with you with that. They love killing big vehicles and things like that.
Point and click and delete.
I think they kind of love dealing with a smaller volume of units as well. Kind of big amounts of stuff on the board is maybe not Ultramarine's strongest point, especially compared to some of the other Marine factions.
Yeah, especially with armies that are running around with more OC and stuff like that on top of that as well. There we go. Okay, we've got Custodes up next.
Custodes got a little points drop, I think, on their guard. I mean, the problem with Custodes is they're still Codex Wardens, and while they're Codex Wardens, they're just how many 4+ into 4+ can you roll, kind of determines your success with them. There's nothing interesting about them. There's no way to express high levels of player skill. They're not the right army for your 3-2-4-1 players, I think. Even if you're a diehard fan of Custodes, it's a little bit of an awkward place to go. I don't think they got enough love here, and I don't really think they're the kind of army that should be getting loads of love. It's very awkward when they're too good. They have the knight problem, don't they? So, I actually think Custodes is the weakest army that we can see that are already on the tier list.
Okay, yeah, that makes complete sense to me. I think let's put it in the middle of C tier for now, and we'll see how far down we need to push it.
Sure, I'm going to keep it here, because I'm not sure many armies are going into this tier, to be honest.
Yeah. Okay, Thousand Suns. Oh, this army got punted into the sun. Man.
Okay. So the overview of the changes is they got a very big rules change, which meant that you couldn't re-attempt to cast a Kabbalistic ritual that had failed.
I didn't even know that. What?
Oh, it's a huge nerf, Dave. That's actually underpinning a massive issue, because essentially you're forced into Grand Coven to get the stratagem to re-roll a Kabbalistic ritual, because without that you have no consistency. As soon as you fail casting Warp Time once, you have no ability to cast Temporal Surge again.
Oh, that is rough.
Yeah,
jeez, that's a big enough nerf already.
Yeah. So they got that on top of also taking, I think, the largest points increases in this particular update. So they are going up, almost 150 points or something crazy like that across all of their units. So this is actually a very, very big nerf. And the context behind it, I think, is really interesting, because up until maybe WTC, I think everyone was saying just how busted T-Suns are.
Yeah.
I actually felt a little awkward because I went to UKTC Super Major with T-Suns, and I came out of it thinking, wait a second, I'm not sure these guys are actually that special. They're certainly a decent army with decent rules, but everyone was talking about them like the best army in the game by a mile, which I really don't think they were. So for them to get nerfed like they are broken is kind of brutal.
Yeah, they got nerfed disproportionately hard for their performance, I think. And look, WTC, we've got no excuse here. There's been a large amount of time from WTC, right, to the release of this balanced data slate, in my opinion. I mean, you could sit down and look at the results from WTC and say, how strong is this army really on its best board format, right? And go, does it really deserve this much nerf? And I think the answer is no. I mean, having played them previously at the WTC before that one, when they were peak power level, yeah, of course the nerfs they got then were completely deserved, but look, the nerfs they received here were just completely out of line in my opinion. I think that if you're a diehard Thousand Suns player, you're really looking for a place to go, and unfortunately the place to go is either playing 30 Scarab Occult Terminators in Rubricai Phalanx or Grand Coven with just worse rules and less points, which is never really an interesting problem, really, is it?
I think you absolutely, like, if you still want to make T-Suns work, you absolutely need Magnus, you need your Mutalith Vortex Beast, and, you know, your way reduced points just to make your consistency in casting. It's still super inconsistent.
Yeah.
You know, it kind of became a meme on the stat check streams, because I would always go in, and whenever they talk about T-Suns, I'd write T-Suns are fine. And everyone would laugh at me. I'd come up on the screen, I'd get my moment of fame. But actually, T-Suns were kind of fine. You just kind of had to nerf the bow goats, which are clearly undercosted.
Yeah.
And I actually think they sit fairly okay in this meta. They would have certainly been an A-tier army, but I don't think they would have been best army in the game levels.
Yeah. I'm going to struggle to see them in... I think they could be in C tier, if I'm not going to lie.
Should we do this?
Yeah, I think in C tier is perfectly valid, to be honest with you.
I think people can still try and make them work.
Yeah. Oh, don't get me wrong. I think that. But, for example, do you think they're stronger than Imperial Knights?
So, Imperial Knights, well, what are the chances, Dave? We made a video. You know what? We made a video about Votann.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah.
We made a video. The Votann Codex is broken.
Yep.
And the same kind of thing has happened here. We made a
Star Shatter as well.
It's okay. It's got to be a coincidence, right, guys? You know, lightning strikes 3 times, but if we make a video about something we broke, you better watch out if that's your faction, because we made that video. Knights did get a pre-codex release nerf to all of the stratagems in Valor Strike, that detachment which we were talking about for ages in our previous video. We'll make sure a link somewhere here, where we basically highlighted that this army is ridiculously fast. Now, all of those stratagems, instead of picking 3 knights, can only pick 1. That is a big nerf, I think.
Yes.
That's a huge nerf.
At no point in the game should you be able to use a stratagem that targets 1,200 points of your army. That just doesn't make sense, I'm sorry. No other army gets that. So, I think they were spot on with the changes they made for that. And actually, just changing those stratagems doesn't dilute, you know, your efficacy of playing that detachment. But it does make the game much more enjoyable for everyone else that doesn't have to play around you YOLOing 3 knights into your face at the 2-2 table for round 5.
Yep.
You know?
Agreed.
And I think everyone's going to be the better for that, personally. And I still think, and I thought in that video, that the Armiger build might be the best one there. And just like we saw with Infernal Lance, you know, we saw Lords of Dread, everyone worried about that. I think the Armiger build has actually just definitely got something there. And in a meta where, you know, there's a lot of damage too, perhaps, could be very tricky for some of these armies to play. You know, we talked about the meta getting a little bit more MSUE, but, you know, to be honest with you, just killing an Armiger for some armies can be quite difficult, especially with -1 damage. Your opponent might have to commit 3 units to kill it, right? And that could be a little bit of a hole in the meta, I think. A nice knight army with, multiple Armigers with -1 damage, I actually think could be quite powerful. Bit of a sleeper build, and people are not going to be preparing for that.
Yeah, I agree. People will not be expecting a high volume of vehicles. I know a lot of people are saying, you know, oh, my 10 fire dragons, should I make them 5 fire dragons? You know, here's the thing. People are starting to change the tone of how they talk about anti-tank in their armies, and are starting to look at anti-elite as the way that they should be going.
I was playing a game earlier today, and my opponent and I were discussing their list afterwards, and, oh, you know, what decisions were you making around your list and stuff, and you know, what they were saying now was, oh, I'm really worried about World Eaters. I'm really worried about Emperor's Children. You know what I mean? So it's completely flipped the switch there on that one, or Raven Guard, or Admech, right? And so completely changed. So gives you a bit of insight into the average player sort of there, the 4-1 player in this case. And I think if you just turn up with your knights.
I think IK were the best army for a 3-2-4-1 player before.
Okay.
I think they're weaker than they were before.
Okay.
But that build you spoke about there, Dave, I think that's still pretty solid. What do you think, B or A tier?
Ooh, it's either the top of B is what I was thinking.
Sure.
So I'm going to go with the top of B tier, in a sense that we might not have anything in A, but I'm willing to shift it up to A tier for sure.
Got it. And how do you think they compare against Chaos Knights?
Chaos Knights. This is an interesting one, because I think Chaos Knights definitely perform a lot better in the team environment. That's for sure. We saw actually for ETC, if you don't watch the recap, I was the 2nd highest scoring player of the event with Black Templars, beaten only by someone from Zugzwang, the German team, on Lords of Dread, 5 big knights, 3 despoilers, right? Yeah. And so I think that's just a good example of, you know, they can push a big differential on the right boards here, right? I think I can't actually tell you an honest answer if IK or CK is better. I haven't seen the Armiger builds play, and I couldn't give you an exact answer, to be fair.
So obviously we played at ETC without the points changes, right? So CK has taken like 100 or whatever. They're one less kind of big knight in their list, kind of points changes.
Of course, yeah.
And you know, that obviously brings them down a level here.
No, correction. We did play with the points because those points came out before the balanced data slate.
Oh yeah,
so we were playing with
CK
the points updates.
and Death Guard. Okay,
Yep.
cool, and it's still solid. All right, interesting. I'm personally going to put CK one step higher than IK.
Yeah, I think that's perfectly fine. That makes a lot of sense to me.
But they're kind of similar.
Yep, lovely.
And yeah,
Chaos Space Marines. This is an interesting one, and I'm relatively familiar at this point with this army.
you played it so many times now.
Oh man, and I've just played the best player in the world consistently every time. CSM. This army is definitely an A-tier army. It has lots of options. I think it's a brilliant singles army. I think Veterans is very good. Raiders is very good. I played against, you know, I had a lovely game against Nicholas from Team Germany on Chaos Cults with 60 ACDCs as well.
Sure, yeah.
At ETC. That's definitely an interesting build as well. I think they have many, many viable detachments and good data sheets that allow for a pretty wide range of play here. So I think bottom of A, somewhere in that range, is definitely where I think they should land. I think they're a better army than Sisters, for example.
Yeah, I find that really interesting. You know, they're kind of like Sisters, where they have multiple detachments that are viable, and the more player skill you express, the higher the ceiling goes. The rules are actually excellent for CSM, and they have been for a long, long time. They continue to be kind of a mid army somehow, and they continue to get little buffs over time. So, you know, I think this is absolutely spot on. I think if you play CSM really well, they are really solid and potentially tournament winning.
Yep, potentially we will see in the near future as the Belgian giant lurks over us. Leagues of Votann, man, I played this one a lot too. I did the masterclass with Tim recently. That was an absolute blast, and Tim won a GT a couple of weeks back, just after its release as well. I also played it at ETC as well, the Need Guard, which is the index version of it. But I've played against Delve Assault. Actually, Tim and I played 2 games on the live stream for this channel. And Votann are pretty solid, I think. Votann are a good army, for sure. They're actually Votann, you know, interestingly, Vic. Votann are a lot more Aeldari-esque now than they were previously, right? It's a lot more of a tricky army, right? You've got to spend a lot more time setting up nuanced kind of plays, traps and stuff like that, reactive moving all over the place, being dynamic, deep strike, rapid ingressing. So it's almost a completely different army, just with the same models, is probably the best way of describing it, rather than just on the tin, I can move this far and I shoot. My whole army is 24-inch range. I think Votann are I think if we were on a different podcast, like in Germany, it would be very high up in A. I think that 4-in-1 player will not perform better than Chaos Knights, so I would put Votann between Chaos Knights and Imperial Knights, I think. Just for what we're going to see in the wider meta.
So, the differences between Votann in their codex and their index, am I right in saying they feel quite a bit faster?
Well, it completely depends on what detachment you're playing.
Got it.
So Delve, for example, is very fast. Like 10 Berserks can move very, very quickly, and they can rapid ingress and uppy downy. The index attachment is a little bit more face up, but it has a bit more damage than it previously did. And it doesn't have as much alpha strike potential. So more damage, less alpha strike. And then the Prospector is much more just a kind of mechanized assault, you know, reactive moving all over the place, for example. So I don't actually know where people are going to land on the best build, but Tim is obviously a biggest proponent of Delve Assault, for example.
Okay, got it. He loves his Berserks, doesn't he?
He loves his Berserks, yeah. I think that most people will probably play the Index detachment, naturally, because it's so early here as well. Stronger than IK? I think they're stronger than Ultramarines, that's for sure. I think between CK and IK, personally.
Yeah, I like that. It looks like the correct kind of place. So they're sitting at a kind of similar power level, and really, this B tier is really feeling like an A- tier here. These armies are good, aren't they?
Yeah, for sure. You can definitely do very well with these armies. I guess another one that I've been playing, or I've played recently a lot, Space Wolves. Now, Vic, this army I think is another army that was kind of unjustly nerfed, I think, given its performance metrics. I actually played Space Wolves at a GT in Darksphere, and the army definitely had a lack of damage, right? Like, I've been playing Ultramarines and, now Black Templars a lot, and the damage output for Stormlance Space Wolves was significantly lower. They already had the Iron Priest nerf, and then they took about 60 to 70 points on the list that I was previously playing, and I was just chatting with another Space Wolves player today, and he sort of said, well, given that I was already kind of struggling for damage, and that I've already taken 60 points as well, then I either have to cut chaff, which then pushes me into just a damage output list, but your lists don't really have a lot of damage output, so you're kind of leaning in the wrong direction there. I think Space Wolves are probably below Ultramarines, Orks, and Guard, if I had to be completely honest.
I would give
and they don't have a lot of good shooting options, so if you're playing on UKTC or GW, they can feel a little bit worse, I think, as well.
Okay, yeah, I mean, this is really interesting because Space Wolves versus Orks in terms of a melee army, a pure melee army. Yeah. Orks are probably the better one, aren't they?
Yeah, I would rather play Orks 100%.
Yeah,
like Space Wolves, okay, let's take this for example. Ragnar and 10 Blood Claws. You look at Ragnar's datasheet and you think, man, this guy's good. But then you realize that you actually use him on the battlefield and you're like, this guy is pretty mediocre, like, for a 90-point character. Like, you can look at a whole lot of other characters that are 90 points, like maybe a Marshal or a Castellan or an Emperor's Champion, for example, or half of Kelgar, and you're like, this is way better than Ragnar. But, and then you got to attach them to 10 Blood Claws, which are AP1 chainswords, right? So, yeah, he went up 10 points, for example, right? Which, honestly, I could have seen him go down 5 points. I was going to cut him from my list. He wasn't very good. So, yeah, really? I feel like they missed the mark on that one a little bit, to be honest with you.
That army, to me at least, especially as an Aeldari player, feels very much built around those Thunderwolf cavalry being relatively cheap, and the -1 to hit and wound stratagem, plus the 8-inch advance and charge stratagem built in Stormlands. That was the power. And it's definitely been brought down a chunk because of how powerful that combination was.
Yeah.
So I agree with you. Yeah.
Nice.
Next one is Dark Eldar. Now, Dark Eldar is weird. We don't know when the Codex is coming out.
Yeah.
But we have leaks. But I think actually in this meta, we're going to see a lot of the Index being played. Probably before we ever get towards the Codex.
And is that Reaper's Wager? Sorry?
Yeah, so I think it probably is going to be Reaper's Wager. Reaper's Wager is excellent. I think it's really strong. Just having those flat reroll ones to hit across the board, having the ability to maybe bring in a Solitaire Harlequin troop unit. The main thing is I think the Drukhari Index is actually quite powerful in this meta. They got a juicy points drop to Kronos. The 2-person Kronos units, I think they're like unbelievably cheap for 2 Kronos. I can't remember exactly where it is, but you're like 60 points a model, something crazy. No, sorry, it's like 75 points for 2 of them or something ridiculous. So they're really, really cheap, and I can see people kind of running 6 of them potentially. And then just playing a normal melee fight first across multiple units. I could see people with 2 Court of the Archons if they're willing or have those.
Yeah. Court of the Archons is really good, man. As a, if you're playing, particularly if you're playing Black Templars, man, that unit is frustrating. And I have Scary in my invitational pods.
Dark Eldar are really good. Drukhari, I think they're really, really strong. And I personally think they are an A-tier army.
Yeah.
You know what, Dave? I'm going to reorganize
Drukhari have a pretty dedicated player base at this point. I'm not going to lie. You're going to whack him in A?
I'm going to whack him in A and adjust that. And I'm actually going to put Sisters above CSM.
Okay.
Because I love Sisters, so here we go.
Nice.
I think these are very similar. These are the high player skill, dedicated player base armies.
Ooh, okay, this next one is... okay, so onto Raven Guard. Boy, this is the new kid on the block. I think if there's any new kid on the block, this is probably it. Even some people I was talking to earlier today were discussing this for their list consideration, which I thought was very surprising, so it's obviously made the rounds very quickly. And There are a couple of problematic things with this army. So, you know what, Vic? In keeping in fashion, I am going to say that this army should be nerfed, and this will be 4 for 4 if we do it. 4 for 4, guys.
The title needs to be Raven Guard should be nerfed then.
The most busted detachment. Raven Guard have an ability that lets you rapid ingress on turn 1. That should not be allowed. I'm just going to say that right now. That is not a good play experience on a unit. So they have an enhancement that you can take. Your unit, you can take the captain with 10 Vanguard veterans. You can rapid ingress on turn 1, which is far too early in the game for a unit that can move 12. Well, far too early in any game, right? So that should be nerfed. I don't think that is a good gameplay experience. That aside, that is not the kind of centrality of why the army is powerful. The army really has gotten some love for models which previously have been quite bad for the last 6 months. Centurion Devastators, which I have 6 beautifully painted. The ability to uppy downing for free is very powerful, and UKTC boards are just a godsend for these guys, man. I mean, your army rule is stealth and cover outside of 12 to shoot. You then apply that to Centurion Devastators, who can access to Armor of Contempt and are shooting from 30 inches away. So generally speaking, to shoot back, are -1 to hit and have a 0 up save functionally. Combine that with the fact that you can rapid ingress on turn 1, you've got a very good shooting army here, which is quite dynamic, and you can oftentimes shoot very consistently Centurion Devastators for 5 turns of the game, and that is a lot of output. These guys have one of the highest output in the game. They will kill a unit of 20 Berserks, like, dead, mainly because they have Blast. And they have 2 other stratagems which are extremely good for them. One is +1 Ballistic Skill and +1 AP. What else do you want on Centurion Devastators that go to Ballistic Skill 2 and then real 1s and get +1 AP?
Yep.
And then fall back and shoot, which is the main downside for why Centurion Devastators were not bad. So this is the Centurion Raven Guard Devastator detachment. I think John Lennon has played a couple of games of this and one on stream, where he plays 6 and 3 of them, and like 20 Vanguard veterans. Yeah, it's one hell of a build. I think if you're going into LGT, you probably want to have a game plan for this, maybe. I'm not sure how popular it'll be for people to play, but I think the power level of this is quite high, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, oh man, I you know what, I would love to play this army. It's so cool. I love the new Aethan Shan model.
Oh,
I think it's really cool. 85 points for that beast.
Yeah,
who unlocks your whole army. Brilliant.
I think it's like 7 attacks, twin linked, sustain 2 at 5/2/2 or something.
You can jump up and down all the time, every single turn if you want. Set up heroic interventions, etc. I think this army is great. It's a great toolbox army with good shooting and okay melee kind of options.
The melee is okay. Yeah, but to be fair, when you're playing 12 Inceptors as well, you can basically bludgeon your opponent in 1 turn and gain a huge amount of tempo on the board as well here.
Is that the build running?
That's the build. No, yeah, I mean, this is kind of the build is like 12 Inceptors, 6/3/3, 9 Centurion Devastators, and a rapid ingress on turn 1. So your turn 2 can just be completely flattening for your opponent.
Goodness me.
To the point where your 6 Centurion Devastators will be the last thing they can worry about killing. You can then uppy downy them again, and then just get continuous turns of shooting Centurion Devastators, which no army in the game, I don't care what army you're playing, you're not going to survive that.
Yep.
So I think this army is, I think it's stronger than, it's either right behind Aeldari or above it, I think, genuinely.
Oh, it's really close, isn't it?
It's
I mean, I think
very,
it beats
very good.
Eldari, to be honest.
It smashes Aeldari, but it could
smashes
even be an
easy.
S tier. I mean, I'd have to see it. It obviously depends on the matchups all around the board. This is obviously extremely early days, but, you know, I would put it between EC and Aeldari, I think is probably a good spot for it.
Sure.
But very, very powerful, I think. I know some people are thinking about bringing it to LGT here.
I like that. I think EC can apply the pressure on it, potentially.
Yeah. What are your thoughts, Vic, about the turn 1 rapid ingress? What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that's a good thing for the game?
I don't think it's as bad as you think it is.
Okay.
But as long as the rest of the rule set is bad, it should be defining for that army.
Yeah.
I think the rest of the rule set is good, so this is kind of going on top.
Yes, the rest of the rule set is excellent.
I wouldn't like to see more rapid ingress turn 1, but I enjoy one-off rules for different armies rather than copy pastes.
Yeah, that's why you can fire and fade. We get it. Okay.
Yeah. Us and Tau, we can fire and fade.
Okay.
Let's keep
Blood
it going.
Angels.
So let's do Dark Angels. Let's go. So someone has been waiting all this video for us to go through the order and reach Dark Angels, and us skipping past this is heartbreaking for them. So for you Lion fans out there, you guys got a nice buff to the Lion. I don't know how many times they can keep buffing this guy to try and make this army good, because now he can pick 2 buffs the same as Gilliman can. I know. And actually, you know what? He bounces around. He does all kinds of things.
Yeah.
But I still think Dark Angels is just a really bland. It's the Custodes of Space Marines, basically.
It is the Custodes of Space Marines. That's fair. Particularly because the Raven Wing is not very popular as well, I think.
Yeah.
I think Dark Angels is actually probably stronger than Ultramarines, actually. That's a tough one. Actually, it's very tough to place this army.
Yeah, because it is actually a bit of a pain to deal with the Wrath of the Rock kind of build.
Yeah.
And Dark Angels. Okay.
What were your thoughts? Do you think it's around Ultramarine level?
I think Ultramarines are better.
Okay.
I think Ultramarine Gladius is a little more dynamic than Wrath of the Rock.
Okay.
And I think they have better data sheets to work with, personally.
Sure. Cool thing. So better than Orks, we're thinking? I think the average Dark Angel player will do better than the average Orc player for sure.
You think so?
Yeah.
I don't think they're better than Orcs.
Okay.
I think they're on par with Space Wolves. These are the forgotten
chapters.
The forgotten chapters. There we go. There we go. That looks nice. Is that showing up on your side?
Yep, we're all good. Okay, Blood Angels.
Oh,
this
Blood Angels.
is an interesting army.
Okay.
And I think actually has kind of... Is this meta better or... Well, this meta is definitely better for them, but I don't actually think it's shifted in the ways which they've kind of wanted to shift, actually, right? We've seen, for example, particularly on UKTC terrain. Okay, Raven Guard will be very difficult for Blood Angels. Centurion Devastators will overwatch a unit that comes. They will pick up 3 units comfortably whenever they activate. They have enormous damage output. I think Emperor's Children are pretty good into Blood Angels as well. Like Rhinos shooting with Noise Marines is just very good there. I think Aeldari is perfectly fine against them. Like Dark Eldar is actually very good against combat marine armies, in my experience at least. Sisters, maybe not so much, but CSM is perfectly fine into them. And then the rest of the B section we've got, the top at least, is Knights as well. So I'm a little bit skeptical about just how well Blood Angels are going to do to bounce back here.
Interesting. I would kind of agree with you, but for a different reason. I personally think in melee versus melee matchups, I don't really rate Blood Angels.
No, they have nothing.
I think because they're not playing out of transports, they have no particular rules to help them through that.
Yes.
For example, if they hit Emperor's Children, I think Emperor's Children have huge advantages in that matchup.
Yep.
They're just a better melee versus melee army. And I don't think that's where you want to be at the moment. I would argue that actually Blood Angels have always been kind of okay into Eldar. And I think they continue to be good into Eldar since their points drop. I think they have enough stuff to be good into Eldar. But maybe even that goes away if people start bringing more anti-melee in Eldar. I'm not sure how feasible that is, but it's a thing. So maybe I agree with you, Dave. Do you think they go in with the Forgotten Chapters, or are they above them?
I definitely think they're better than Ultramarines, and I think they're better than Imperial Knights. So I put them around the Votann level Imperial Knights. I mean, I think it does depend on the terrain format you're playing. On WTC, they are significantly better, but on GW and UKTC, where shooting armies are more prevalent, they can really suffer because you then are in this list building design space of, do I play some shooting? I've got 0 support for shooting units. I can't go too much shooting, so I'm not really a shooting army, so my shooting is fake, right? And if your opponent just goes, your shooting does nothing, I'm going to still shoot you, move and shoot you anyway, then you've just diluted your army. And I think every Blood Angels player has been in that cycle, I think, of list design, of being like, oh, should I play 2 ballistas? Should I play a Bile Predator? Oh, this never feels good. And then, whatever. So I think, probably between where we've gotten right there is pretty fair.
Perfect. I think that's a good spot. Necrons is a really interesting one. I think they took so they got a buff on Praetorians, which is cool. You know, some unit
Okay,
that's not
yeah.
really used.
Never been
But
good.
they lost the ignore modifiers on Silent King.
Yeah, this is an interesting one, because they did gain quite a powerful ability, right? It's not as if they supplanted that with something which was useless, right? You know, when we see Magnus being played, we obviously see that buff a lot. But at the same time, you know, Emperor's Children are in the meta as well, and ignore modifiers is quite good against them on the Demon Princes. Marines are good there as well. And I think I was wrong. I initially thought that +2 to move would be quite good for them. But it seems to be that the experts in the community have said that actually ignore modifiers was, when it is useful, was very useful. One of those abilities, so to speak. You know, it's very good against AOC, -1 to wound, stuff like that as well.
I do wonder if the intention was to try and buff the Silent King or nerf the Silent King.
Yes.
Very hard to tell
It's not clear.
with that one. But okay, where do you think they sit in terms of, you know, the different archetypes? Because I know as an Eldar player, I think the Star Shadow builds with either Wraiths or even the 20 Warriors we saw Gito run at ETC. Actually, these are not good matchups for Eldar.
No.
They're quite scary, but I don't know if they're good matchups against other stuff.
I think the bottom of A tier is perfect. It's difficult to see Necrons not in the A tier at the moment. You know, they've consistently been good throughout the entire edition. We do see players do very well with them when they crop up. And I think the people that have played Necrons now are probably playing Necrons for a very long time. And I think Necrons are better an army than kind of CK Votann, Blood Angels, Imperial Knights. A friend of ours, actually Anthony Trezino, who was the Wargames FX guy, I think he got made the top cut at Nova. He bet Matt Laura twice, who was playing Eldar. And, you know, I think Necrons continue to do pretty well. And, you know, Silent King and Doomsday Arcs are both very good on UKTC and GW terrain formats. So somewhere in the bottom of A, I think.
Yeah, okay, cool. I can see it, for sure. Dave, you know Deathwatch got some decent buffs here.
Yeah, they're still terrible, man. Jesus. The problem is not the points. The problem is the points, but the problem is the detachment is just, you know, just quite bad, right? 20 points down on an Indomita kill team is 370 points instead of 400 on your 3 wound Space Marine units that will get killed by 2 Centurion Devastators, or Blastmasters, or Fuegend, or just die to a Ravager, die to a Castigator, die to some Oblitz, or die to some Doomsday Arcs, die to a Despoiler. So I can go down the list. The problem is that the damage isn't very good, so I'm going to continue to say that Deathwatch is terrible. In fact, I would rather play Custodes 100%. That is my take. I would rather play, for example, a Caladius Grav tank is a legitimately good data sheet in my opinion. And that is something which Deathwatch does not have a lot of.
Got it. It's so interesting. I mean, Deathwatch are meant to be a dynamic kind of tricksy army, and they kind of fall flat, don't they? And it's good to have you here, because not many people, I think people are making takes without actually having played Deathwatch.
Yes, and for example, you're completely spot on. Deathwatch is meant to be a dynamic uppy-downy army. By the way, for guys that haven't seen my Space Marine army, my entire Space Marine collection, all my chapters are painted as Deathwatch. I have custom Deathwatch shoulders and Terminator heads. Everything is painted Deathwatch. The problem with the army is that the stratagems that are dynamic only synergize with your kill team units, and the kill team units are like a minimum of 150 to 200 points. So your army is extremely blocky, and then you're already playing Space Marines, so you know, outside of 3 blocks, you don't really have a lot to work with after that. And the damage is just not good. Like, you think you're dropping a Dominant kill team on something, you know, use 2 strats or something like that and blow something up with your second Oath of Moment. No, it just doesn't. Your multi-melt just hits on falls re-rolling and you hit once and you're like, okay, cool. Okay,
so their worst army at the moment. How about this one, Dave? Another one of yours.
Yeah, Tyranids, man. Tyranids are not very good, but they are. Well, I think Tyranids are probably better than Thousand Suns, but
okay.
They're pretty anemic, man, to be honest with you. I think, you know, if I was a Tyranid player, I'd be pretty upset with the storyboard of how my army has progressed over the edition. Because we've seen AdMech now get a huge buff, right? And we'll get to that in a bit. Tyranids have never really had that, and they've been lingering for a very long time. 2 WTCs ago, they had a pretty decent performance with Crusher Stampede, but they seldom have won any big tournament, right? So Crusher Stampede was a good list, but that was like the very definition of like a fair list, you know? Like, it was never like, oh, my opponent was playing Crusher, he had this like thing that I couldn't deal with. It was like, no, he has like, 10 big monsters. Okay, right. So I think actually Tyranids are really due in for some love. Like on units that are, Broodlord, Flying Hive Tyrant, Genestealers, Tyranid Warriors, like these types of units I think should have been buffed a long time ago. And they just haven't been. So I think Tyranids are an utterly fair codex, right? I mean, we even saw Subterranean Assault get nerfed. The one good reason to play it, which is that you could teleport out of combat, which I think is a, you could argue, unique rule that only one army would have. Even that got nerfed. I mean, I went from Tyranids playing Subterranean Assault, nerfed before launch. Space Force with Iron Priest, nerfed before launch. And then my next army also got nerfed before launch. I was like, wow, okay. Awesome, so...
Don't play Dave's armies.
no. But I'm playing Space Marines now, they seem to get new models every single month. So.
Perfect. So you can keep cycling through them.
Yeah, that's excellent. So, I mean, I think they're probably better than Thousand Suns right now, because you've got more stuff to work with, but... Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a sad time for Tyranids, I think.
Okay, got it. Yeah, I agree with your take. Yeah, fair. I mean, Dave, all of the armies are your armies. What is going on with Demons?
Dude, Demons. Okay. Demons are a very fair army that haven't really gotten a lot of love, and I think have really suffered because of the existing Knight meta, right? Knights were a terrible matchup for Demons, and we've actually got some of the problematic matchups for Demons still existing here, right? For example, I still think you will see Knights on the table. I still think they'll be prevalent. I don't think Votann is a good matchup. I don't think Emperor's Children, Raven Guard definitely not, Aeldari, and I don't even think Sisters are a good matchup. We've got Admech coming up here, which will be good against Demons, and Black Templars are very good against Demons. So Demons, it's just one of those codexes that haven't really been updated, right? And are suffering a little bit of the power creep of armies that are now being developed and released, I think. I don't think that they are better than Imperial Knights, but I think they're better than Ultramarines, maybe. I know Statchick Innes was saying that the Ultramarine Storm Raven Stormlance build is still extremely good. Yeah. But I think given the context of the ruling there, I don't think that that's particularly playable. And I think Aeldari are very good against the Storm Raven build.
They are. So, I think that they kind of sit with Orks and Guard, I think. They're in that trifecta, really.
I'm happy there. Yeah. Are they a better army than Orks? I don't think so. Are they a better army than Guard? I don't. It's very close.
So they're at the bottom of that then, okay.
Yeah.
Got it. That's a nice position. We'll put Ultramarines a little ahead of them probably.
Yeah.
There we go.
It's difficult when you're judging the performance of an army like Ultramarines, where realistically there are only a very few amount of players that play it, right? In particular, referencing the Ultramarine Stormlance build here. So it's difficult to say exactly how powerful they are.
Probably, I mean, there's tiny percentage differences between a lot of these armies in A and B. I think it's really the C tier armies that are noticeably weaker.
Yeah.
And probably the two that we put in at the bottom of B, maybe.
Yeah, I agree.
But yeah, even those are actually pretty decent armies, Faithful and Death. It's just a good meta.
Yeah.
Just a good meta. Death Guard. Oh, okay. So Death Guard, really interesting. They obviously took some points changes already. Previously, and they didn't really take any rules changes, I think.
No rules changes. No.
Yeah, okay, so they are where they are at ETC, the level we saw them at ETC, which is still a really solid army,
Yes.
I think they have good rules, good output, still a little bit of dynamism from the Death Shroud Terminators, which didn't get a rules change. And the thing that I think has stopped is the 1-2 punch of Plague Burst Crawlers plus Death Shroud Terminators is probably not the best build that Death Guard have, which I think is good for the potential toxicity of the meta. So what do you think, Dave? Do you think they're still an A tier army with Virulent Victorum?
I definitely think they're still an A tier army, but I think here's the thing. I think the vast majority of players that were getting, let's be honest, pretty easy wins from a codex which was completely overtuned, I think I'm going to abandon the faction probably. So I don't think a lot of people that were previously playing it will stay with it. And I think the players that will stay with it will probably move to Virulent Victorum. I think is like a build like Alban had with some points out of it. And I still think that that's actually a really powerful army.
Yep.
It is really interesting that noticeably people are talking about it a lot less. They're a lot less worried about it, right? Which is a good sentiment to have when you're discussing it with people.
Fine. I mean, I certainly think they're weaker than Eldar. What do you think, Dave?
Yeah, but I do think they're better than Dark Eldar and Sisters, personally. I think it's difficult to say they're not more powerful than those armies, given the data that we've had come through, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would agree with you. I think the raw power of the Codex still exists there. So yeah, this is starting to come together. This is looking like a really good tier list. Okay, cool. And then World Eaters is a super interesting one, Dave.
Yeah.
You know what? For teams, obviously, we've seen the power now across WTC and ETC of the high volume of Berserkers list.
Yes.
In Berserker Warband. I think that is an incredibly powerful list.
Very good, yep.
How does it translate into singles? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I actually stayed with Chris Redford, and prior to ETC where Chris played World Eaters, we were developing his list together somewhat as well, and he came up with a brilliant list with 50 Berserks with a lot of chaff. And actually, the chaff in World Eaters was the strongest part in some ways. Like Jackals and Spawn are actually really overtuned how many points they cost. And that's actually the key that Chris found out in his playstyle and his macro strategy. They do suffer from some tough matchups, right? I think that, for example, obviously Raven Guards is extremely tough matchup, but at the mid tables, I think you get a lot of ability to seize opportunities and take them and play quite well. For example, I can imagine a good 4-1 World Eaters player is someone who can think, okay, I can get a good pile and consolidate here, hit you through 3 inches, and then get a massive tempo lead in this game, for example, right? Or my opponent's made this mistake, I can go in now. And I think that's a pretty common play experience when you play against World Eaters. I think that World Eaters are one of the better armies in the game, for sure. I don't think their matchups are that bad, and I think terrain format-wise, they work pretty well on UKTC, I think, as well. You're going to have, matches where you can have your 20 Berserks in the big ruin, then your Rhino with 10, and both of them be fast enough to reach any part of the board, really. That's in the mid-board. So, I don't know. I could see World Eaters being better than Death Guard, man, to be honest with you. World Eaters are very good. They're actually very good. This
is a super interesting one because I think there are 2 types of World Eaters builds here. The one that we have stuck in our head right now is 60 plus Berserkers. But there are other builds, people are going to be running Forge Fiends, 8-bound, Exalted 8-bound buffs.
Yes,
so you're going to see that mixed arm kind of builds. And I think those are also really strong. But I think uniquely, the loads of Berserker build only really lose to the top 2 armies on this list.
Yeah,
EC and the Raven Guard.
EC quite good into them, are they?
I think EC has the positive matchup into the loads of Berserkers.
Cool.
But I think, apart from that, Aeldari just has 0 chance.
Yeah.
And I think they just literally beat everything else on there. I would personally put them as the 3rd best army.
Okay. Yeah, I can see it. Let's go for it. Yeah, I'm a big fan. I think World Eaters are very strong. Yeah, and I think they propose a huge amount of opportunity when you play them, which is a very cool play style. I think it's been fascinating with World Eaters to watch the development cycle of them, because a lot of players when they first came out were like, Forge Fiends are broken, right? Oh my word! But then as time went on, we saw people play 0 of them, and that be the optimal build. And I played Roman from Team Netherlands, who was the 2nd highest scorer on his team this year. And I was like, oh, you've got 2 Forge Fiends. He's like, yeah, I hate them. I was like, yeah, they're not good. And I was playing a whole bunch of Sword Brethren and Marines, right? And they just didn't do anything.
Yeah, the concept of momentum and tempo with melee armies is really important. And I think the Forge Fiend takes away from that a little bit, because World Eaters can just run out of stuff if they have their points in things which don't just run at your opponent. So like you mentioned the Jackals, but now we have Exalted 8-bound, we have 8-bound, we have loads of Berserkers. All of these things can really run at your opponent and keep the tempo going until the end of the game. And just having 1 or 2 melee units left towards the late game is all you need to round out your games as a melee pressure army. So yeah, I think no Forge Fiends is the build which is going to be stronger, but I think even Forge Fiend builds are still going to be good.
Yes. What about Grey Knights? I mean, this is very tough because Innes just did very well with them using a Storm Raven Warpbane task force. I think he has a recap he usually does, so go check that out if you're interested. That's obviously a pretty unique build, so to speak, right? And quite difficult to replicate, I think, for the majority of players. So should we base it off that, or should we think about where Grey Knights have been historically?
No, I think we should base it. I mean, obviously their codex is out now, and they really didn't get too much out of their codex.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything.
I think really it's still going to be playing around Warpbane rather than Banishers is probably the right way to go with it. And I think Warpbane gives them great output, but still they're stuck with relatively bad data sheets in my opinion. I mean, Purifiers are great now. They're a little bit better in my opinion. But I think overall as an army, they don't have as much going for them, I think, as the A-tier armies. And I don't think they even have as much going for them as a lot of B-tier armies. Sure, you can be Innis and make it work, but I don't think someone could take Innis's list and put it into singles outside WTC format and necessarily do well.
Yep, I agree.
So I would probably put them in that bunch with kind of Ultramarines, Orks, Guard, and Demons.
Oh, okay. I was, a little bit lower than that, actually, personally. I would put them below Dark Angels myself.
Sure. All right. I'll go with you on that.
Sure.
Nice. Tau, though. Dave.
Cool. Some good buffs.
Dave, there is a point where you hit the break point with Tau.
Yes. Is that strength 10?
Yeah, and it was coming. And they gave the Riptide strength 10.
Yes.
They improved the Markerlight ability. You get a lot in your Tau armies now.
Fantastic.
They also play UKTC format and GW format brilliantly.
Yes.
And so if those are our singles formats, I think Tau have hit the break point where they have enough stuff that I think they can play melee pressure now. The problem is, how good a Tau player do you need to be able to orchestrate your stuff in a way where you don't just get smashed?
Yeah.
And that's the bit I struggle with. The power level we're talking about in terms of player, I wonder if you could find a Lewis Smith, like that kind of level Tau player. What they're going to do with the Codex is going to be very different from even the one tier below that. What do you think, Dave?
I mean, you really do need that, like just the absolute best, like Lewis on it, and playing a build like a Tiger Shark, for example, right, which is not everyone's cup of tea. And I think that combination can be quite deadly. But I mean, on the weekend on the WhatsApp chat, I said, mate, Lewis, when it dropped, I was like, Lewis, Riptide's got strength 10. Like, that's got to be pretty big, right?
Because it's got to add up.
In my head, I thought also, UKTC boards, can you play like a Montcar, move aggressively, shoot these angles? Because Riptides are actually very good in a shootout. Very frustrating to kill. And now, all of a sudden, you get, against a transport, for example, Vic, you get +2 to wound. You go from wounding on 5s to wounding on 3s. It's massive. So like one Riptide can just kill a transport. Yeah. And Riptides are good, but that was also, the best builds were like usually 3 Riptides, right? The ones that could stat check you aggressively and shoot you aggressively. And so that's got to be big, man. I mean, I don't know. It's really, really tough to gauge this one, I think.
Yeah, I think so. I'm personally, Dave, I'm going to call it right now.
Okay.
That I think they are technically, on paper, they are an A-tier army, and I think they're as good as Necrons.
Okay, I thought you were going to go there, actually, to the left of Necrons.
Yeah, probably just in this space here.
Yeah, sure.
So those 3 are kind of sitting together there. Now, Admech is an interesting one.
Oh, man. Okay.
Dude, I'm just gonna create space. Yeah,
Admech got the buffs I think they should have gotten a long time ago. And they did it in a really interesting way. They replicated an existing ability, of course, like Oath of Moments. And that also made Call got flat 3 shots, which is way better. Call's actually good now. Like, I'm just going to tell you, Games Workshop, now, if you want a recipe for success, just make the Primarch good. Like, it's not difficult, Like, make the Lion good, make Gilliman good, make Call good, for example, right? That's a recipe for people enjoying the army, right? And that's what they've done this one. I think they've knocked it out of the park. But Admech will either be between Skitarii Hunter Cohort or Halo's Creed. I think now that Chicken's got the biggest buff, I think Halo's Creed's probably the version you're playing it. In fact, I played against Admech earlier today. Chicken's got a huge buff. They got Twin Linked, which Admech had a difficult problem on reliability, I would say, and that's filled the holes in one of their largest units. And Chickens are very, very, very good now. You can pick Oath a Moment to get 4 rerolls to hit with sustained. Then you can get Twin Linked for 4 rerolls to wound. So it's the perfect package for deleting a tank across the board, right? Nice. So all of a sudden, I think your list building can go from 3 units of 2 chickens for all your anti-tank, and they're very fast. By the way, they advance and shoot and fall back and shoot in their data sheet ability. Just a heads up. So fall back and shoot, advance and shoot, 4 rerolls to hit, 4 rerolls to wound, sustained hits. Great. So that can play your anti-tank, and then the rest of your army you can just invest into playing the rest of the game, which Admech actually has very good units to do so. They've got Ruststalkers, which got like damage 2 now, so they're good against Marines if you want to play a mix of that. Infiltrators, which now work great with Oath a Moment, so that's really interesting because they get sustained too, naturally, and they got +1 AP. And then there's one other change, but I can't remember. But
Ruststalkers going damage too? You said that one, right?
Yeah. There was one other small change I think there as well, but
got it.
Yeah, that's a really big impact for the army, and I think they were struggling beforehand, and now I think they are somewhere up in the A tier, probably above Death Guard. I think.
Sure.
There are, they were a good A tier army, I think, and this has made a lot more direct impact on their game performance, right? You don't actually need to use this trick or make this, tough decision or something like that. You just Oath a Moment, rerolls, okay, problem solved on that side of the board, right? So it's not really like something you have to really finesse out to get value out of. So I think they've had a direct impact.
Really interesting. The matchup. So I personally think Admech have the advantage against Eldar.
Yeah, fair.
But the other 3 armies above in the A tier, I don't know. What do you think, Dave? Where do they sit versus Raven Guard, for example, and melee pressure?
Yeah, I think that can be tough, for sure. And they have a lot of units, so Emperor's Children can really bog them down. And so I think Aeldari is probably an interesting matchup. Depending on, totally would just depend on what you're playing, I think, in that one. But World Eaters could be very tough as well. So, for example, your units like Ruststalkers and Infiltrators are almost useless in those matchups. Why? Because if you charge with them, your opponent will heroic 20 Berserkers into you. And then your unit will die, and you'll have 20 Berserks 8 inches closer than they otherwise would have been, and it's almost game over. So, yeah, I think maybe above Death Guard is somewhere I'd be thinking right now.
Yeah, I that's where I put them at the moment. And I'm putting Eldar above them, even though I think Admech maybe have the advantage. Because I think maybe Eldar are better against the rest of the game than necessarily Admech are. I think Admech find 1 or 2 loss conditions against other armies that Eldar don't necessarily find. So I think Eldar are the slightly better armies still. But these are very strong armies. These are great armies here.
Yep. I think we'll see a lot of resurgence of Admech players at LGT, for example. I would love to see Malik Armin Rubio coming back to LGT out of retirement playing Admech. So hopefully this reaches him. Hopefully he gets hyped about that.
Just 2 more to go, Dave.
Yeah. Genestealer Cult. Did you look on the nerfs on any of these, by the way, Vic?
No. Talk me through them.
The triple nerf, I think, again, for this. Some strat nerf, resurgence point nerf, and then point nerf on top of that. Oh, no, the crit 5 strat nerf, I think, was the one that went nerfed or something. Or some data sheet, something like that.
Got it. This is for hosts, right?
The Host of Ascension, yeah. But it does hit some other builds a little bit here. I think I'm definitely not an expert of this, but I don't think if we're grading it on the 4-1 player skill, I think it's difficult to see Admech performing, Genestealer Cult performing better than Tyranids, for example.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, if we're grading it on the, on the 4-1 player scale, I think, you're going to be even less forgiving, right? And to be fair, this army is a complete anomaly because if we grade it on its actual power level, you're talking about 4 players in the world probably that have the stamina to actually play in coherency out a 3-hour round multiple times in a day.
You say this, but I think the GSC player base is small but skilled even outside of those 4 players. You don't often hear of bad GSC players.
Okay.
So I think their player base is actually like a 4-1 player base.
Okay.
And I would be really surprised if actually there isn't more power in that codex than, say, GK. Than even Dark Angels. I think personally they sit in that mix of B tier, somewhere around those forgotten chapters.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
I don't think they took a hard enough nerf, Dave, to knock them out of that. I think they're still a good army, but I still think they lose randomly all over the place.
Yep.
So Dark Angels are going to go down.
Yep. So
this is the one.
I've been doing the Gauntlet of Space Marine chapters recently.
This is you, Dave. You would be a Black Templar. Dave.
You think so? Just
I think so.
righteously crusading
Absolutely.
throughout
You'd be the Emperor's champion. You'd be the Fireside
Emperor's
champion, mate.
This is an interesting one here. By the way, you know what's funny, Vic? The Black Templars Masterclass, which I did, which you guys can check out, I played almost point for point the exact same build at ETC and destroyed. So it just goes to show you, like, I really practice what I preach here. Yeah. Pun intended. Black Templars. It's an interesting one. I think the way that I described it in our WhatsApp chat earlier was that Gladius gives you the ability not to lose to anything, but also the ability to kind of just beat anything, right? And that's kind of how this army is, right? Like, you're gonna live and breathe and die on your ability to play it, and Black Templars, believe it or not, plays a lot more like Aeldari kind of mindset. Not in move blocking, but you are gonna... Units that you put out there will probably die, so you really need to set up these reactive move, Sword Brethren consolidating to touch other units, then reactive move. Like, reactive move is a huge part of your game plan. It really is an all... kind of, it has every trick in the book, I would say, right? Whereas Ultramarines sort of had that, but this really does have that. On the weekend, I was playing kind of Grimaldus, 10-man, 2 units of 5 JPIs, 3 units of Sword Brethren, Emperor's Champion unit, and 2 Rare Pixes, and I like to describe that as having 8 units that actually all do stuff, which is a lot. Like, you get a lot. I saw a lot of other content creators out there having builds that had double-joined Martial Castellans and absolute death squads. They would destroy anything they ever touched, right? But the problem is you have half the amount of units that actually do things. Yep. Whereas you can just play a Castellan and 5 Assault Intercessors that do 75% of that damage and cost 135 points, which is, like, really good because they're OC2 as well. And your army rerolls all over the place. Like, everyone was dunking on Grimaldus, and I was the only one that came out and said, no, this guy's really, really good here. So, other than that, I will probably be playing these guys at LGT, and I think that they are... I think that they're better than Death Guard, and probably not as good as Admech, but they have game into anything. And I think if you've got the player experience...
Right up there.
Yeah. Oh, I definitely think it's an army that's right up there, for sure. You've got play into absolutely everything. You've got Repexes, which provide you a good shooting backbone. And then you've also got a lot of melee pressure. There are a couple of feels bads with the army, which is that, you know, you are playing Gladius, so you have a very... You don't have a telegraphed go turn, right? But you have a... You have a go turn where you put Assault Doctrine. If you roll low advances, that's just, you know, what can you do about it, right? But, you know, I was the second highest scorer in the tournament. I played a lot of combat matchups, and the army is very good in combat matchups. Emperor's Children is not a great matchup, but you're going to need to be an expert to play that one. But like Raven Guard, you can definitely play. Like, you might lose a lot of your army, but if you connect some of your army, they will die. World Eaters is actually, I would say, almost a good matchup, especially on more open boards. You know, I played that last round. Funny thing is, Vic, when you fight on death, they can't -1 damage. So you can actually put a Sword Brethren unit and shoot it with a Repulse Executioner.
Yes.
If they Blood Surge, they hit you first, you fight on death, they don't get to use their strat ever because they have to fight first because your unit doesn't have fights first. And then you click fight on death and your unit with Sword Brethren erases a 20-man like off the face of the earth.
Lovely. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean,
super cool.
Reactive moving and fight on death is a really big part of the army. And then Storm of Fire with Repexes is like pretty considerably good. So yeah, it's super fun to play. I've enjoyed it the most out of any Space Marine chapter I've played yet. I've enjoyed it more than Space Wolves for sure, because the shooting component isn't completely lackluster. So that's been a big part of it as well. I've loved it. I've had a great time playing them.
I think they're really cool. I mean, I think we've got them in the right place here. I'd say the only real game... Okay, how does the Emperor's Children one go? I think that's probably very close, right?
So it's a tough one because Winged Demon Princes with -1 damage are legitimately very good against your army. -1 damage is very good against Black Templars. But you have a couple of positive things. You have Repulse Executioner can be quite difficult for Emperor's Children to kill. So you've got that. And you've got Reactive Move, which can be difficult for Emperor's Children to play into, I think, as well. So, I mean, like I just said, like, the two things I just said was Repexes are good, but you have to play them safe and well. Reactive Move is good, but obviously you have to play that well as well, right? So, you know, it's an interesting one. I think,
Nice.
Noise Marines are very good at killing Marines as well, like Blastmasters at flat 3, and the Cacophonous squad can do a lot of damage, particularly on Overwatch, so it's an interesting one. I think it's definitely a game there, and I think Aeldari is one of the more tougher ones maybe out there, but that's still a game 100%, right?
I mean, so here's my take as an Aeldari player. I think that the Eldar profiles line up perfectly into Black Templars, but Black Templars just need to get the little scraps, their character at the end with a few wounds in, to just take chunks out of the Eldar army. That's your win condition.
Yep.
So I think it's a really, really good game, but I would give the advantage slightly to Eldar in that one.
Yeah, maybe you unattach your Castellans and your Marshals there, so you get more units, right? That's an interesting one. And, the flexibility is really cool, right? Because you can join your characters in lots of different configurations. So actually that's really powerful and kind of mixed meta, right? Like when I played against Nicholas's ACDC unit, the Chaos Cult one, I could like double join 2 squads and run like 1 squad with no units attached or something like that. So it really does reward a very high level of matchup understanding. And I was very surprised that not many people, well, a lot of people thought this is just Gladius, so I'm going to play it like it's Gladius, but the reality is it's actually, you've got more units than you otherwise would have. You're not playing blocky Blade Guard veteran units. For example, Vic, Blade Guard veteran unit is 170 points now, I think, for 6 dudes. And in Black Templars, that's a unit that will hit almost as hard as that, but it's 130 points because of the attached characters. So, yeah, very interesting, very fun. I love them. It's just whether or not I end up playing a Titanic, Baneblade, or Hellhammer at the Invitational, or whether I play Black Templars for both of the tournaments coming up.
Absolutely. I'm super excited to follow your journey. I mean, this is the time where I think people should be taking their screenshot of the final tier list day, because I think we don't even need to change anything here. I think we
it's pretty
smashed
good,
this one.
Yeah.
And what I would say is that I think the gap between B and A tier is really tiny. The gap between the armies within A tier is really tiny as well. And this is like a very fine differentiating kind of thing that we're creating here. So don't think that, you can't win a tournament with CK, Votann, BA, IK, Ultramarines, because I think you absolutely can. This is a beautiful meta, and our S tier is completely empty. I think there is nothing broken.
Yeah, there's nothing that has a winning matchup against everything, which I think is a defining S tier, or D tier, where it has no winning matchups across the board. And, I was talking to Liam about, should I play Raven Guard, all this hype and stuff like that. And he said, and we kind of both said, look, like, your army-specific knowledge will be the most determining factor in a lot of these games. So army comfort and matchup knowledge is at a premium, where the games are quite tight. And and especially, I mean, Challenger cards are gone too. Hooray! Oh my word, what a terrible game design mechanic. So
one comment on Challenger cards: people are saying that this is bad for Eldar, losing Challenger cards. I completely disagree. I think Challenger cards going is a buff for Eldar, and actually one of the most significant buffs in this.
I mean, Eldar really wanted to play that primary denial of Thigma first.
Absolutely. You want to absolutely send it and push a points differential, use up your whole army, and then at the end of the game survive with whatever scraps. The Challenger cards made it really hard to do that. It's gotten a little bit easier. So I would say out of everything, the meta has gotten a little worse, but Challenger cards disappearing is one of the most significant buffs for Eldar. And I think we put them in the right place there on that tier list, pretty high up.
Awesome, man. I think Aeldari looking great. Of course, you can check out the Aeldari Masterclass on 40K Fireside as well. I mean, it's just an absolute banger as well. And there we go. Hopefully, we'll get someone on for the Dark Eldar Masterclass as well. That'd be cool coming out. And then, we're going to be looking at a new edition in, 6 months' time? 7 months' time?
Probably
maybe?
sometime next year.
It'll be interesting to see what the meta shapes out to be after the next balanced data slate. Once we've basically had every codex, I think, as well, right?
Absolutely. Guys, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and, join the membership, especially the Discord level, which is categorized as Discord level on YouTube membership. The Discord is huge now, so it's really, really active. Hopefully see you all soon next time by the Fireside.
See ya.
Thank you for listening to the 40K Fireside. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe, drop us a comment, check out the YouTube members area, and we look forward to seeing you again next time by the Fireside.